It's the middle of the night. You're awake. Not because something's wrong, you just woke up. You check your phone, 3:14 a.m., and your stomach sinks a little because you know what comes next. The math. 5 hours till the alarm, 4.5 if you fall asleep right now. You tell yourself you're broken, that good sleepers don't do this, that something about you is wrong. But 300 years ago, almost every human on Earth woke up at exactly this hour, on purpose. They expected it. They had a name for it. And what they did in that dark, quiet hour might be the single thing your body is still, quietly, begging you to do tonight. We treat sleep like a test we keep failing. 8 hours, unbroken, in one clean block. Or you did it wrong. There are apps that score your night, mattresses that cost more than a car. A whole industry built on selling you the perfect, seamless, uninterrupted night of sleep. And if you don't get it, you feel like a failure before the day's even started. But here's something almost nobody knows. That idea, sleep as one solid, unbroken block, is shockingly new. For almost the entire history of our species, nobody slept that way. Not because they couldn't, not because their lives were harder, because the night itself was built completely differently from the one you're lying awake in right now. Picture a world with no electric light. None. When the sun goes down, darkness isn't a setting you flick off with a switch. It's the entire world. It arrives early, it stays for 14, 15, 16 hours, and there is nothing you can do to push it back. No screens, no bulbs, just fire and moonlight and the long, deep dark. And in that world, our ancestors didn't fight the dark. They didn't lie there resenting it. They lived inside it. Their night had a shape, a rhythm, a structure that we have completely, totally forgotten. And once you see that shape, you'll never look at your 3 a.m. wake up the same way again. Here's the part that breaks people's brains. Historians went digging through hundreds of years of old documents, diaries, court records, prayer books, medical texts, even depositions from criminal trials. And they kept finding the same strange phrase, over and over, in dozens of different languages across centuries written by people who never met. They wrote about their first sleep, and then, separately, their second sleep, as if these were obvious, everyday things that needed no explanation at all. Because to them, they were. Humans used to sleep in 2 shifts. You'd go to bed not long after dark, early by our standards. You'd fall into a deep, heavy sleep for 3 or 4 hours. That was the first sleep. And then, somewhere around midnight or 1 in the morning, you would simply wake up. Naturally, calmly, on your own. And this is the part that matters. It was not a problem. Nobody panicked. Nobody reached for anything to knock themselves back out. This waking was expected, ordinary, and quietly treasured. It was, for a lot of people, the most peaceful and private hour of the entire day. But that raises the obvious question. If they all woke up in the middle of the night, what on earth did they do with that hour? And the answer is stranger and more beautiful than you'd think. For 2, sometimes 3 hours in the dead of night, the world was awake, but slow, soft, unhurried. People stayed in bed or sat near the embers of the fire. They prayed. There were prayers written specifically for this hour, meant to be said in the dark between sleeps. They talked, quietly, with whoever was lying beside them. Low, drowsy conversations you'd never have in the bright noise of daytime. They thought about their dreams, which were fresh and vivid and close, and they took those dreams seriously, turning them over in their minds. Some people got up, tended the fire, checked the animals, stepped outside under the stars. Couples were close, and mostly, people just existed. Loose, dreamy, half-lit, in no rush to be anywhere because there was nowhere to be. And here's where the science gets genuinely wild. Researchers wondered what would happen if you took modern people and gave them that same ancient night. So they ran the experiment. They put volunteers in darkness for 14 hours every night, no artificial light at all, and just watched what their bodies did. For the first while, people slept the way we all do. One long block. But after a few weeks, something remarkable happened. Their sleep split in 2. On its own. A first sleep. A long, calm, waking gap in the middle of the night. And then a second sleep. Nobody told them to do it. Nobody trained them. Their bodies simply remembered something the modern world had made them forget. And it gets better. When researchers measured what was happening in that waking gap, they found the volunteers' blood was flooded with prolactin, a calm, content, settled hormone. The same one your body releases right after you wake up feeling rested. The same one that floods nursing mothers and fills them with peace. In other words, that middle-of-the-night waking wasn't stress. Chemically, it was one of the calmest, most contented states a human body is capable of being in. So sit with that for a second. This thing you dread, Waking in the dark of night was, for your ancestors, a chemical state of deep calm. So what happened? Why don't you wake up at midnight blissed out and peaceful? Why do you wake at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding, certain that something is wrong? Why did the calmest hour humans ever knew turn into the most anxious one? The answer is a single invention, and it is almost certainly glowing somewhere in your room right now. But here's the part nobody tells you about it. Light. Artificial, abundant, cheap, endless light. For most of human history, light after dark was rare and precious. A candle was an expense, a luxury. Then lamps got brighter, cheaper, and then the electric bulb arrived and shattered the night completely. Suddenly you could push darkness back as far as you wanted. So people stayed up later. And later. The long, dark, two-part night got squeezed, compressed, crushed down into one solid block of sleep, jammed up against the morning alarm with no room left in the middle. And within just a couple of generations, the second sleep didn't just shrink, it vanished, so completely that we forgot it had ever existed at all. The phrase first sleep dropped out of the language. The prayers for the waking hour were forgotten, an entire, universal human experience, gone, in the blink of historical time. And then we did something genuinely cruel. We took that ancient instinct, the body still trying faithfully to wake for its quiet hour the way it had for thousands of generations, and we treated it like a malfunction. We gave it a clinical name. We called it insomnia. We called it a sleep disorder. We turned the most peaceful hour our ancestors ever knew into something you take a pill to make stop. So let me say this as plainly as I can. Your 3 a.m. wake up is not your body failing. It is your body succeeding, doing precisely, perfectly, what it was built to do across 300,000 years, inside a world that no longer has anywhere to put it. And once you understand that, you start to see how cruel the modern version really is. Think about what we actually do now when we wake at 3 a.m. We panic, instantly. We run the math on how few hours are left. The anxiety spikes. And then, almost every one of us, we reach for the phone. The single brightest light in the entire house. We shove it directly into our eyes, which does exactly one thing. It tells our ancient brain that the sun has risen, that it's morning, that it's time to be awake. So of course we then lie there, wired, for an hour, hating ourselves for it. Now compare that to our ancestors. They woke into the same darkness. But they expected it. They had no glowing clock to panic against, no screen to blast their eyes. They simply drifted in the soft dark, in the firelight, and let the second sleep roll back over them whenever it was ready. Same waking. Same hour. Completely opposite experience. And the difference between their peace and your panic was never your body. It was the story you were handed about what that waking means. They woke into calm. We wake into fear. And the fear is the only thing actually keeping us awake. And there's something even deeper here, something we lost that has nothing to do with hormones or sleep stages at all. For hundreds of thousands of years, the middle of the night was the hour when people were most honest. No work could be done in the dark. No one was watching. No one was performing. It was the hour for the prayer you'd never say out loud in daylight. The worry you finally let yourself feel. The quiet, drowsy word to the person sleeping next to you. The thing you could only say at that hour in that dark, half asleep. The deepest, softest, most private part of being a human being had a time slot reserved for it. And that time slot was 3 a.m. So we didn't just lose a sleep stage, we lost a room. A small, dark, quiet room inside every single day where people went to be alone with themselves and honest with each other. And here's the haunting part. Some part of you still shows up to that room, every single night, knocks gently on the door at 3 a.m. and finds it locked and lit up and full of a phone screaming that it's morning. So what should you actually do tonight? Go to bed early, make sure you shut off any light sources in your bedroom. And what do you do when you wake up in the middle of the night? Almost nothing. Just stay in the dark. Let your mind go loose and dreamy and unbothered the way theirs did. Treat the waking not as a failure to be fixed, but as the quiet hour you were handed. The same one billions of humans were handed before you. And most likely, gently, the second sleep will rise up and take you, exactly the way it took them. You don't need to fix your sleep. You need to stop fighting a body that already, perfectly, knows what it's doing. There's one last thing, though, and it's the part that stays with me. For all those thousands of years, that midnight hour was never lonely, because everyone was in it together. The whole world woke at the same time, into the same dark, and shared the same quiet. But you wake into a sleeping world that has paved over its own quiet hour and forgotten it ever had one. You knock on a door no one else even remembers exists. So the real question was never why you wake at 3 a.m. The real question is this. In 100 years, when not one person alive remembers that humans once woke gently in the dark together, what else will we have quietly forgotten our own bodies were ever built for? Sleep well tonight, or don't. They didn't, and they were absolutely fine.